What's up, everybody? It's Rita Sekali, your Catholic girl on the radio. Welcome to a new episode. This episode is titled, Christ Bears with Us. If you have any questions about this episode, throughout this episode, you can contact me at The Word with Rita on social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, anything. Stay tuned. Hey, you guys. So, St. John Paul II, he's one of my favorite saints, and he says, "There's no evil to be faced that Christ does not face with us. There's no enemy that Christ has not already conquered. There's no cross to bear that Christ has not already borne for us and does not now bear with us." So, here we're talking about Christ and our suffering. I think, really, everyone's always struggling with something. There's always a certain thing happening in people's lives that causes them to struggle. And I point here that Christ has already gone through this. So here's the thing. Is it physical pain you're struggling with? Look at the cross. Christ passed through it. Whatever your physical pain is, if it's a headache, if it's a stomach ache, yeah, there you go. If it is a broken bone, a shoulder, an unhinged shoulder, any pain that you felt, any physical pain that you felt, Christ has struggled with it. He's faced it before you. He was there, so he understands your pain. Ask him for help, not just for healing, because of course, undoubtedly, if you're listening to this, if you are praying at all, you're probably asking for healing. But whatever it is that you're struggling with, ask God to help you with it. Is it emotional pain that you suffer? Let me tell you something. Christ lived through it. Can you imagine the emotional pain that he must have felt on the way of the cross? We kind of tend to look at the cross and we think, okay, it was a simple thing, or not a simple thing, but we kind of tell the story as if it's just a story. And we don't actually make this connection. And I think we don't until we really meditate on the Stations of the Cross. If you've never done that, please do that. It's really helpful. But can you imagine the volatile emotional pain that Christ went through? So if you're struggling with emotional pain, I want you to know that he lived through it and he is with you. He understands. JP says, "There is no cross to bear that Christ has not already borne for us and does not now bear with us." Now, today, he's with you today as you're suffering. Is it dishonor you suffer? Christ suffered. He was stripped of everything. Everything was taken away. They completely wanted to dishonor him. And we see that the more we pray the Stations of the Cross, the more we see that. And it doesn't take our dishonor away, but what he does is that he gives us the strength to continue. Because he has already borne the cross for us, and he's with us today as we suffer this. Is it deception that's making you suffer? Christ was betrayed by one of his closest friends. That man was with him the entire time. He saw him do miracles. He ate with him. He traveled with him. And yet he was still betrayed by one of his closest friends. If that is your suffering, Christ is with you. Whatever suffering it is, really, whatever you're struggling with, look at the cross. If it's loneliness, how do you imagine the nights in prison were like for Jesus? He has gone through everything that any human could possibly go through. And he did that for me and for you. And he did that so that when we struggle, we can come to him. So before we continue talking, let's take a small break and then come back and we'll talk a little bit more about Christ and his suffering for us. Welcome back, everybody. So Hebrews 4:15 says, "For we do not have a high priest who's unable to empathize with our weaknesses, but we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are, yet he did not sin." So Christ, our high priest, he's not someone who's far away. He's actually someone who's very close by. He's someone who's with you today in your suffering. He's someone who's with you today in your joy, in your happiness, if you're listening to this in the car, in your drive, on your drive. But he's with you everywhere. And in any situation that you're living in, he can empathize with you. And he could sympathize with you. He's with you. And I can't stress that enough, because a lot of times we feel alone. But just like we feel alone, just because we feel alone does not mean he's not actually there. Because I can sit in my room and my mom be in the kitchen. And even though I don't hear her voice, I know she's there. And I'm not alone. The same way with Christ. Just because I'm not hearing his voice doesn't mean I'm alone. And really, hang on to Christ, because he's hanging on to you, and he suffered with you. And honestly, this means that he can empathize with every single pain that you can possibly feel. He can relate to you. You can relate to him. Because in the past, before Christ, God was someone that maybe was far away. We looked at him as a God that's far away, but he's not like that anymore. He's not. He has put himself in your shoes, in everybody's shoes. He took on everybody's pain. He literally felt every single pain that you could possibly feel. And he did that so that you can relate to him, so that I can relate to him. You can count on him understanding what you're going through. Why? Because he went through it. Christ walked this path for you. And I'm going to say this 1,000,000 times over. Pray the Stations of the Cross. One thing that Jesus asked St. Faustina to do daily, and a lot of other saints, is pray the Stations of the Cross. If you can, 3, great. If not, then any time during the day. The more you pray the Stations of the Cross, the more you understand your pain and the more you're able to tolerate it. Why? Because we do not have a high priest who's unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are, yet did not sin. Let's take a small break and then come back and talk some more. Welcome back, everybody. So in Matthew chapter 11, verse 28 through 30, Jesus says, "Come to me, all you are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your soul. For my soul is easy and my burden is light." Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. Again, look at the Stations of the Cross and it'll help you understand your pain. Look at his wounds and you'll understand yours. He'll make them make sense and he'll make them easy and he'll make the burden light. So really, in short, just come to him. That's what he says. Come to me, all you are weary, and I will give you rest. And what you need to do is you need to cast your worries on to him and like him bear your cross just a little bit longer. You can do this. You can live through today. If you're struggling through something, you can live through today. And he will lead you to salvation. Really. if ever in doubt, look at the stations of the cross, those that are placed all around the church. After the cross comes the resurrection. Walk them, and you'll always end up at the altar. You'll always end up at the resurrection. You always end up knowing that you can do this. Why? Because he did it first. He did it, and he will give you the power to do it. That's why he says, come to me, and I will give you rest. What's troubling you? He will give you rest. He will help you. And you will learn from him. And you will find rest for your soul. You'll learn to love like he does. And you'll learn to be his. That's it for today. Really hope you enjoyed this episode. Again, if you guys have any questions, feel free to contact me through social media. And, yeah. See ya next week.